Hi everyone, welcome back to Mama's Orchids. Today's video is my first care collab with many of our orchid community YouTubers, and I'm honored to be included in the group. And thanks to Ninja Orchid for coordinating. Here's a list of all the other channels that are participating along with myself on Big Vanda General Care. Well, first, I'd like to introduce myself to those of you who may be new to my channel. I'm sorry, I'm clearing my throat a lot. I'm trying to get over a cold. I'm the mama in Mama's Orchids, and I grow in Zone 9A in Texas Gulf Coast area. I've been growing orchids continuously and more seriously for the last 5 to 6 years or so. If you haven't subscribed, I would love your support, so thank you ahead of time. Today's topic is caring for large or big Vandas. To me, Vandas are the most exotic looking orchids because of its bare roots, its color, and the size of the flowers. So I think everyone needs a Vanda in their collection to enjoy. Well, let's talk about how to take care of one. So first we have to understand where they come from, and in general they're from the tropic and subtropical areas such as India, Himalaya, Southeast Asia, Indonesia, Philippines, New Guinea, South China, and Northern Australia. And the seasonality is not very dramatic in these areas except for heavy rain monsoon season. Definitely no freezing temperature. Being from these tropical areas, they are extremely sensitive to cold, and they don't do very well when it's below 50 degrees for an extended period of time. So I'm going to cover the different aspects of care and culture. I would be looking at media, watering, fertilizing, and reblooming, and some general information at the end. So the first part I want to cover is media, which is potting. To me, that's really easy, but it may not be as obvious to others, and I've made so much mistakes on this. So the potting of choice or media of choice is none. Don't pot it. I've potted these orchids before, and I've always regret it in the long run. And I'll show you some pictures, but unfortunately I don't have any videos of when I unpotted a couple of them, and it shows that it's all the roots have rotted over time. Here's a good example with this Vanda Soroa cherry bomb that I have potted in a homemade plastic pot with wood bark. It rotted away, and I ended up with 2 keikis. After the plants were stressed out, it produced 2 keiki, and the main plant rotted away. Now that doesn't mean potting is no good for others, so it just didn't work for me over the span of 2-3 years. I could tell things weren't going very well. It should have been blooming size. This one right here was the one that rotted away. I just let the roots freely dangle, and I use Spanish moss sparingly to help absorb moisture. I don't use too much because it will choke out the roots. And don't forget to remove some of the moss over time, as the moss will multiply. Ideally, I guess it would be nice to be able to mount these Vandas, but we have to realize that most of us don't grow in tropical year-round weather where you can just mount them in some large trees or large barks, and it makes it very difficult to handle the large item. So let's talk about watering next. As spring is approaching, I'll bring everything out when the weather is warm enough, about 45 or 50 and higher. And this is in Fahrenheit, of course. I'll start spraying as soon as I can on the Vandas because they're bare roots, and ideally constant misting water on the Vanda. They would love that. My best method for watering is to spray twice. First spray is a primer to wet the roots and allow about 5 minutes to let that first soak, and then spray it again, second time, and about once and sometimes twice a week. And when it's really hot outside, I'll soak the roots in a bucket of water or in my pond. I have an outdoor shower, and occasionally I will rotate which Vanda gets a shower with us that week. Yes, in the hot heat in the summertime in Texas, the outdoor shower is heavenly after a long gardening day, and the orchids love it. If you have an outdoor shower, definitely make it a new home for some or all of your large Vandas, and you will see a huge difference in the roots. You can tell right away when your orchid is not getting enough water. The Vanda leaf should be nice and smooth, and it shouldn't feel lines and wrinkly. A good solution to keep the orchid hydrated if you don't have a bucket or a pond is to use a large new clean trash bag or a damp, very lightweight cloth. To just drape over the roots and let it sit for a while and absorb humidity as much as possible. Next, I want to talk about how to feed the orchid. It's a challenge when it's a big orchid. You don't want to waste a lot of money, and yet at the same time, you want to give it as much food that it needs. How I feed it most of the time is I make a feed in the bottle, a sprayer, and I just spray it multiple times of it in a day during the feeding days. And once in a while I do make a mix in a bucket, and all the Vandas take turn soaking in it. So remember that the bigger the orchid, the faster it grows. That's a general rule of thumb, so it'll need more fertilizer. Now, large Vandas can take a stronger fertilizer mix than the average orchid. Okay, let's talk about how to get it to bloom. First, it has to be old enough. Now, if you are a fairly young hobbyist, as I am, as far as number of years experience is concerned, you are more than likely haven't grown a seedling Vanda to a large, big Vanda. And as far as I know, it takes about at least 7 years to get full size. And for some of us, it may even take longer if we don't have optimal condition. So it's taken me this long to figure out that my Vandas weren't blooming for the longest time because it wasn't old enough. And that's because I bought them when they were so young at Lowe's in the little bag babies. I think I bought all of them except for 2 in bags. And just about every one of them is starting to bloom for me the last couple of years. So don't keep beating yourself up about why you can't seem to get your orchid to bloom. First, figure out if it's old enough. And then secondly, it has to be hydrated well enough. And then third, it has to be has enough light. Lighting is also very important. I think western facing light is really good. Just make sure it's protected from the direct sunlight. Something worth mentioning too is where to look for the bloom spike. Sometimes it skips 2 leaves, sometimes it skips 3 leaves. So, and it's not always consistent. I can show you a couple of pictures or videos where I have seen the same orchid skip 3 and yet next time it skipped 2. So, but look around that area. The most important factor, though, it seems that besides the age, is the temperature change or the light change. One of those factors in the environment that dramatically changes usually would initiate a spike. For me, I've noticed that some of the orchid will start spiking when there's a drop in temperature from summer to fall weather, and then vice versa when it starts getting really warm all of a sudden from winter and it's spring. So let's talk about maintenance on large Vandas. One of the things you have to do is some trimming. And you can actually trim the roots. I really think that it won't phase the Vanda very much as long as you don't overly do it, where it will drastically cause a setback. But and the reason why I'm almost sure that it won't cause any problem is, so I've had this Vanda for a while now, and sometimes I'll have the kids help me take this Vanda out while I'm taking other things out, and there's so many times they have broken roots off this thing or stepped on it while they were picking it up, and it will yank some roots off, and it never phases this Vanda, and it just, you know, still goes along, and it's got plenty of roots. So but I do think that nursery growers do trim sometimes their roots. Sorry, you hear all the banging because one of my kids is playing basketball outside. Here's another example of where the Vanda, the large Vanda, was severely trimmed prior to me purchasing it. I don't recommend it trimming this severely, but somebody did it, and an orchid survived. The other maintenance that you have up here is sometimes, you know, it's just like you have some old leaves that will start to deteriorate. So then all we have to do is trim it off, and what will happen is roots will grow all along where you have the old leaves trimmed off. So, and then sometimes what you'll see is roots will come from between the leaves. New roots will come between the leaves, and it will grow out, and the leaves are sort of blocking the way of the roots from heading downward. So what you need to do is yank off leaves if there is a root between here. And some Vandas can get so big and tall, and of course, you know, this is nothing. This Vanda is nothing compared to a real large Vanda. But you can see that this has potential to be very big based on the fact that it is, the leaves are so wide. Well, as you can see, I don't have a ton of large Vandas, so I don't have a lot of experience with it, but I hope you were able to get something out of this video today. And please leave a comment if you are interested in any discussions. And have a good day, everyone. Bye-bye.